I want to welcome you. As Nate said, I had the pleasure of being on the board of the Dallas Architecture Forum and serving on many committees. One was the lecture committee, and so one of the ways you get such great architects is because of the thoughtfulness that goes into and the network of the people who are on that committee. I was on it, but I then chaired the panel discussion. And Nate already gave you some insights. When the 20th anniversary came about and we were in that committee meeting, we were going, what's something that's kind of different that we can do? And so we decided that we would pick 20 talented people in the design community in Dallas, and at Temple Emmanuel, we lined them up, all 20 people all across. And so it was a huge turnout to represent the 20 years that forum had been in existence. And everyone had a great time. The audience had a great time, but then afterwards, I got calls and I got emails from people who've been on the panel, up on the ideas, saying, we should be doing this again because I didn't know this about, it'd be Max Levy. I mean, and they've known each other forever. So the network started with those 20, and then we had a panel, forum panel meeting. And I said, I'm getting really good feedback. So why don't we see if this can become a tradition? So now we're 7 years hence from when we had this at Temple Emmanuel. And every season, there are 2 seasons that the forum has. Every season there is a design panel. And this is cool, we do not run out of talent to think about, to invite and bring. And I don't think that we will. There's so much talent in Dallas. And so highlighting that is just something that is very, very wonderful to be able to be part of and see it. So that's my introduction. Okay, now I'm going to be introducing Mike Malone. Michael, whoops, I'm sorry. This is Michael. I know you do not like that. I goofed already, guys. All right, so Michael Malone, the FAIA, he's the founding principal of the Dallas-based Malone Maxwell Dennehy Architects. Known for its award-winning and widely published projects, the firm focuses its efforts in areas of residential, retail, corporate interiors, and recreational design. The firm has been recipient of both the AIA Dallas Firm Award in 2013 and the Firm Award of the Texas Society of Architects in 2023. He served on the 2015 president of the Texas Society of Architects and continues to serve that society. And I actually think that I first met you, Michael, when you became president at some party when that was announced. He is author of The Architect's Guide to Residential Design, is contributing editor to the Texas Architect magazine, where he has written on a variety of topics. He is a current board chair of the AIA Dallas, where I also have been on a board member for a while too. That's a great board, and is active in the community honors and home tour committees. Now, a little known factoid about Michael. His father worked for Disney, and not surprisingly, when he grew up, he wanted to be an Imagineer. He really thought that's what he would become. And he said that it didn't quite work out. And so I'm going to say we're all the beneficiaries that you did not become an Imagineer at Disney. So that's Michael. Now I'm going to introduce Lauren. I've known Lauren for quite a while. I met her when I was doing some strategic workshops at Studio Outside. And it was, I think it was your first week at work?
First day, yeah.
First day?
Yeah.
Okay, and so I've known her for quite a while. Lauren Cottrell, PLA and ASLA, is principal and founder of Delineator Design, a landscape architect firm with offices in Dallas, Texas, and Charlottesville, Virginia, where her husband is a very well-respected professor and chair. Her experience spans the globe on a broad range of award-winning urban and site-scale projects that are focused on environmental sustainability and material craft. She credits the strength of her most successful work to her ability to curate strong collaborations with clients, architects, artists, stakeholders, engineers, and consultants. She focuses on strengthening the connection between people and place to develop the groundwork for long-lasting, exceptional spaces that express harmony with nature. And that's true, because I've seen you in the process of doing that. And the thought that goes into it. She also serves as State Secretary of Texas American Society of Landscape Architects and holds positions in other organizations that advocate for public space and urban design. So now you want to know the fun factoid for Lauren? She was a Girl Scout for 11 years, and that has certainly influenced her path in leadership and advocacy in landscape architecture, the lessons learned there. And now we're going to move on to Chris Angel. He's creative director of Chris Angel Design and has a bachelor in design and a master's in architecture from the University of Louisiana. And Lauren and Chris didn't really know each other until the other day when we had a Zoom call to plan this, and they thought they might have overlapped at the university. So they're still trying to figure that out. Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, you figured it out.
Yeah.
Cool. After graduate school, Chris worked in the fields of art, retail, and fashion before pursuing a career in interior design. A successful decade as creative director of Emily Summers Design Associates led to the founding of his firm in 2022. Known for his wonderful connection with clients, Chris's projects range from large-scale hospitality projects, curating artwork, and entire interior residential spaces for his clients. Since the firm's founding 2 years ago, they have been featured on the cover of Patron magazine and have maintained a flourishing relationship with Emily Summers, collaborating on 3 contemporary single-family homes. And as an aside, in Patron magazine, one of my favorite rooms ever, and it's like seared in my brain. I didn't realize that Chris had done it, so I was thrilled when I was reviewing his slides. It's like, oh my God, that's him. And then his fun factoid is he likes dinosaurs.
I didn't know what else to say. I didn't know what to say.
It's like, what? Okay.
I don't know.
It's just fine. It passed. It's in here. And then, as we planned the panel yesterday on Zoom, we had a blast, in case you can't tell. It was so much fun. I asked everyone to send me a little-known fun fact about themselves. And to continue the theme and to end on the forum's fearless and indefatigable executive director, Nate Udaly. Here's his factoid. At only 7 years old, Nate steered a boat through a canal in Amsterdam. He was in the driver's seat. He's 7. And there were 50 tourists on board, probably scared to death. And the regular captain was right beside him. Even though Nate was in the driver's seat for just a couple of minutes, this obviously left a lasting memory in his brain. And then when you sent this over, and I'm talking about the driver's seat, because I've worked with Nate now, for a decade, driver's seat he likes being in. Even at 7. Okay. With that, we are now I'm going to be turning over to Michael to do your presentation. And thank you, everyone. I'm so glad you're here.
Good evening. I'm glad you guys came. We don't have to worry about just having 2 people in the audience who had to ask us an hour of questions, so this will be a lot safer. I wanted to start and say that an important thing for me when you're talking about inspiration is this community. For people outside of Dallas, I think they think of this place as sort of this hot cowboy kind of place, but they don't realize that there's a really terrific design community here. And all of us feed off of one another and support one another. And I can tell you after many, many years in Texas that this is a unique and great place, and it's because of all of you. Further, I take inspiration, I'm going to talk about sort of artistic inspiration things, but I think all of you would agree, your family and your colleagues at work are critical to your successes. And architecture is a team sport, you don't do it by yourself. I'm driven to be inspired and successful because I have children in expensive graduate programs. And I think all of you probably understand some of that. The main thing that my wife and I do for fun is travel. We do a lot of travel. And I learned a long time ago, I was an undergraduate at Auburn University, and our study abroad program there was a sketchbook-based study abroad program. So we would go from building to building and draw. For those of you of the digital generation, sketching is where you take a pen and put it on paper and images come out. You don't have to boot it up. There's no technology involved. It's similar to handwriting a letter, which is another lost art. Someday I envision a place like Colonial Williamsburg where there'll be architects sitting in a room with a drafting table and everyone ooh and ah. and there'll be people writing letters, and they'll ooh and all over that. Letters are different from emails because you can't say F you in a quick response. You have to take your time and write it out nicely. So I just thought I'd share some places that I've been in the last 12 months. And so last January, I went to San Francisco for the National AIA Convention. Many of you I know were there. And I spent a day in Berkeley, and I got to do some bucket list things. I got to see Green and Green's Thorson House, one of the 4 ultimate bungalows. I've seen 3 of them now. This is a really tremendous house. It's now the Sig Ep fraternity house, and it's a tribute to Green and Green that it's still in good shape. I got to see Bernard Maybeck's First Church of Christ Scientist, which is one of his 2 masterworks in Berkeley. Soon after seeing that building, I was able to see the faculty club at Berkeley, a really astonishing building. I got a chance to look at those details, one of which is the famous dragon head hammer beam. If any of you have been there, this building is a master class on scale and texture and material. When I draw, in my early days, I drew sort of the cartoon line drawings that a lot of us drew, but I've gotten older, I'm really interested in the way that space is modeled and the way that details work and the way that color and texture and things work. So it's made me slow down my drawing process and spend more time trying to suss out the way that light falls in a room and the way that shadows work. And so these drawings are very different for me. I stayed in Embarcadero Center at the Hyatt Regency, John Portman's National AIA Design Award winning building. Embarcadero Center's held up pretty well. Some of the buildings are over 50 years old now, and when it was first built, it was widely ridiculed because it sort of destroyed the street grid in San Francisco and did some very unusual things. But now it seems to have grown in really nicely. The landscape's matured, the art is wonderful, and it was really a terrific place to stay. And then finally, I got to visit V.C. Morris Gift Shop, one of Frank Lloyd Wright's great later works. Hopefully all of you have seen this. It's on Maiden Lane in San Francisco, and it's kind of a nice encapsulation of Wright's entire career. The sort of arch motif that was important in the work he did for Sullivan in his early life, combined. The interior of this is this wonderful spiraling ramp, kind of very similar to what he was doing with the Guggenheim. So, terrific building to see. In July, we went to to St. Louis. We had a daughter who was working for the Cardinals for the summer, which was a terrific internship. If you're a baseball fan, it was great. We got to go and see Brad Cloughtill's Contemporary Arts Center, St. Louis, which is a really fantastic building. If it weren't for sharing a lot with Tadao Ando's masterwork, the Pulitzer Foundation, the 2 buildings compare well, but unfortunately for Cloughthill, it doesn't compare favorably. This building, if you haven't been there, is well worth a trip just to St. Louis to see it, because it's spectacularly built. The scale is domestic. It's a very comfortable place. Walking through with my wife, who is not an architect, she said, I could live here. I'd have to do a lot better than I'm doing now, but I think it's an inspirational thing. We also got to see Sullivan's masterpiece, the Wainwright Building. I know all of you know this from architectural history class as a black and white photograph of kind of a dirty, smog-covered St. Louis. It's now a state office building with this wonderful addition that Mitchell Jurgala did in the 80s. Having a chance to see this building, our daughter's apartment was across the street from it, and you could look out at it, and it's everything you could ever imagine about a carefully proportioned, well-made building. A lot is made of Sullivan sort of inventing the skyscraper, but that's a one-liner. Sullivan was an exceptional architect. And the ornament on this building, it's beautiful as a mass, and it's beautiful at close-up scale. Really an amazing thing to see. In December, we made our annual pilgrimage to Jackson Hole, where one of my favorite, more recent buildings, Olin Sywinski Jackson Grand Teton Visitor Center, a wonderful sort of contemporary take on classic sort of national park large architecture, a really great way to show how wood works. And then in February, we went to Fayetteville, Bentonville for the Texas Society of Architects Design Conference, and there we had a chance to see the Bachman House, Franklin Wright's really wonderful project that's been reconstructed at Crystal Bridges, Marlon Blackwell's Thaden School. It's an entire school campus designed by Blackwell, and then the Fay Jones School of Architecture. A lot of people ask me why I draw these buildings as opposed to just taking a photograph. I want you to know it's not because I can't afford a cell phone with a phone feature, camera feature in it. Oftentimes people will come up to me when I'm drawing and say, why are you drawing that? Why don't you just take a picture? Which is a fair comment. And then I try to explain, well, I'm trying to memorize the building by seeing it, by drawing and getting to know it better. And oftentimes their response is, well, that's kind of a waste of time, isn't it? Which is good. It's good for people to ask that. Sometimes they come in and ask, that building you're drawing, why would you do that? And one time I was in New York and I was sketching, and this man came up and said, you know, I walk by here every day. I've never noticed this building before. I don't know why you're taking the time to draw it. And I was standing in front of the Guggenheim. Not making this up, not making this up. So the other big source of inspiration besides other architects is artists. I have started this thing of when I see a painting or a sculpture that I like, taking the time to draw it. Drawings this way, I imprint that information in my mind. So I like Picasso. I know he's kind of being canceled right now. I don't like all Picasso. I like Picasso the Cubist, and I like Picasso from the Fontainebleau period, the three musicians. I like the great artist Marsden Hartley. You know, there's a beautiful Hartley at the Amon Carter, and there's several others. Hartley used objects to do abstract sort of stories, a long tradition of still lifes that fill the gap in how people think and look at things. I love the Matisse at the DMA, Ivy in Flower. I love these late Matisse paper cutouts, I think because of the structure of them and the fact that simple pieces like that can convey so much information. I like the artist William Bailey. Many of you may know his still lifes. It's in a tradition of Giorgio Morandi. The thing that's great about Bailey is these are really could be cityscapes, or they could be rooms, or they could be collections of people. Because all the objects he paints, there's an interior volume. And one of the things interesting about Bailey is the idea that you could look inside and see it. I like Richard Diebenkorn for the landscapes. And I like Gerald Murphy. All of these are pieces that you can see at the DMA. And finally, and perhaps most important, right now I'm on this kick of really thinking Louise Nevelson is pretty great. I like the idea that these are spaces that are filled with objects and light, and also things that you could inhabit in your mind. I think that's really great. So I will quickly run through a project to show you a piece of our work. This is a house we have under construction in Midland. We got a call one day from this young man who said, my wife and I want to build a modern house, and we have a lot. And I was nice to him. I said, well, that's great, because I always imagine one of my children calling an architect for help. And he said, we want to build a White House like the ones on your website. And I said, well, that's great. So why don't I come to Midland and visit? So I drove down one morning, and I sat in their office. I got there about noon, and they said, well, we're going to order lunch in, and gave me a McDonald's menu. And I thought that was a little strange, but it is Midland. And then they said, we're going to try out the delivery service. And I said, oh, well, do you deliver food for a living? And he said, no, we own 21 McDonald's. So it turned out to be a really good trip to make down there. So these are just some images of the project in progress. Landon Williams, our office, is the project manager. He's there today, in fact. So this is a large canopy roof over the house itself and the biggest screen porch in the world. Thank you.
Those were incredibly inspiring sketches. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that wonderful intro, Meg, and thank you both, Nate and Meg, for having me on the panel tonight. The Dallas Architecture Forum has been such an important part of my inspiration since I moved to Dallas in 2015. I was actually at that first Design Inspirations panel and remember it really fondly. My origin is from New Orleans, Louisiana. I grew up in a mystical, magical Mississippi River Delta, and Looking back on it now, I didn't know at the time, but I can tell that I had designer tendencies when I was a child. Everything mattered to me. I think our careers are really not linear, but I'm going to take a bit of a linear story here. I did not start as a landscape architect or know that's what I wanted to be. I began as a journalist and wanting to pursue a career in writing, and through that learned my passion for storytelling. I had a wonderful professor who took me on a walk on campus and said, "Lauren, you may write a book one day, but I don't think it's in journalism. Have you thought about design?" And I found the beauty of telling stories through this, and I see my inspirations as really kind of embedded in one another and have been progressive in life and really centered around the places I've been and the people I have known and the process itself. As Meg has already revealed, I was a Girl Scout for 11 years. It absolutely shaped me in how I saw the landscape and empowered me to pursue my own path. I grew up in City Park in New Orleans, places that the City Park is very similar in size to Chapultepec Park in Mexico City, if you're familiar with that. And it's a very large park, and this transect of vibrant culture in an urban area and life in the streets mixed with very temporal, ever-changing, mystical landscape. It was really embedded in my appreciation for landscape architecture. I decided, actually, when I started in design, I wanted to be an architect, and I learned about the history of cities around the world through architecture. And that led me to landscape architecture and urban design and opened my mind to city planning. And in 2005, I decided after Hurricane Katrina to change my major to landscape architecture officially, and felt very compelled to hopefully make a difference in how we can prepare our cities and redesign cities for disasters. And I had a great professor who helped me understand what it meant to be inspired and to observe and translate that into a large-scale urban design. In 2007, I saw the cover of Landscape Architecture magazine, because back then that's how we got information. We didn't have Instagram and things like this. And I was just taken aback by this project in China that had this beautiful red ribbon running through it. And it very much inspired me, learning that this was actually part of a larger plan to restore a river corridor. And 2 years later, I was very lucky to go and work for Kongzhan Yu, who was the founder of this firm and the recent winner of the Oberlander Prize in Landscape Architecture. It absolutely inspired me in what I do. I was able to go to this place and to really learn the stories of the people, not only that live in these spaces and use the space, but the people that I worked with and how they shaped the space and how his background actually led to what he did. And his book, The Art of Survival, was very much rooted in production of landscape and bringing that into landscape architecture on a very large scale. I took that influence and inspiration with me after I graduated from LSU in 2010. I ended up working in China again and went back to China for 1.5 years and worked very, very much inspired by beautiful things, but I'm also very drawn to rough and broken and opportunity and failures. And this is a project on the left-hand side that became the Nanjing Youth Olympic Park. I was just out of school, and I think in landscape architecture, we often see outside of the lines of the boundaries of the scope of our work. And this project, I wasn't necessarily asked to go and do this in-depth analysis, but I took my iPad, which actually had CAD on it, even in 2011, and assessed 150 points where the levee had been broken on the Yangtze River. And we were able to make a case to the local government to allow us to pull the levee back, restore it, and enhance the water quality. And this project was very exciting. We worked with Zaha Hadid, but I think this was the most inspiring part to me because seeing how we could shape that for people who actually use the space and for the better of the environment was very exciting for me. When I was taking some architecture classes, if I could come back to life, I wanted to be Le Corbusier. Aside from his actual built work, which you could talk a lot about maybe after, but I was very much inspired by his writing in The Radiant City. I still open this book to this day when I just feel, because I work, I don't work in a large office, I'm in practice, and sometimes I want to rant and rave, or I want to hear people ranting and raving, and I open this book and he writes things in all caps like, we should utilize space better, and don't forget about the landscape. And that always stuck out to me. And Archigram, of course, very inspiring, and how we could think about the future and depict that. Other inspirations in landscape for me were works of Maya Lin in Grand Rapids. I'm drawn to ethereal, these more ephemeral type of blending of landscape with very distinct geometries that are blended with more natural gardens and surrounding landscape. And of course, Catherine Gustafson here on the bottom right. Ernst Haeckel here on the right-hand side. I've always been quite inspired by his art and flip through his books often to derive inspiration. On the left-hand side, this is a documentarian and a documentary from the 1930s, Jean Painlevé. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to look it up, called Science is Fiction. And this slide for me is about this famous quote of, the artist and the scientist are quite similar because both of them have to study a subject very closely. And I truly appreciated his documentaries because he's really underwater and studying these seahorses and the shapes they make and how they live. And I like to think I am contributing this way in an urban sense and studying urban life. I am very excited by parametric shapes, math, and geometry, and this is the foundation of a lot of my design. On the top left is the W Dubai. I was a young designer and got to lead this design very young, like maybe 2 years out of school. I was excited because I drew this sketch and my boss had done a sketch and he brought them to the client. Mine was like the alternate, option C. And the client came back and wanted option C, and we got to really push that. And it was very mathematical and stepping and curving, but in much of my design, I think there's a lot of circular geometry I've noticed about myself, and I think that's from my inspirations. A project that's very near and dear to my heart is the Plaza at Solana. It's the first project that we constructed as Delineator. We were very lucky to have this project. It started as a very small piece of a patio that we were working with some very wonderful colleagues and friends, Sean Garman and Kelly Mitchell, and we were able to, we saw a much bigger potential for this project to expand it to this full 2 acres and presented that to the developer. We thought they may kick us out and like, you're crazy, but they actually said they wanted to build the project, and we were quite excited. This originally was the IBM campus done by Ricardo Legarreta and Peter Walker and Martha Schwartz. It was a very land art move, very big moves that made sense with the architecture at the time, and was quite a bit about volumes and voids. And in 2012, there was a renovation. The architecture changed quite a bit and was painted. The color was lost. The spaces weren't utilized, and we saw an opportunity to not only be inspired by ourselves, but to sometimes look back at a project and think, what was the inspiration of this project? What were other inspirations before us? And what is worth preserving or bringing memory of back? And the colors of this project were originally inspired by the Texas prairie. And we brought some of this back into the shade structure that we created there. That's right in the back here. And you can't see that until you actually go under the underside of that. some of our projects too, and my inspirations are really back to my work, maybe in Louisiana and the lower Ninth Ward, or things that need very important solutions and are complex. When we started Delineator, I was very inspired by a woman, Alendra Lyons, who was working in this neighborhood, doing very important, critical, on-the-ground solutions for children and education. And we decided to take some of our time. We had to spread it out pro bono over a year and a half, but create a very large planning document for her and how we could create a farm plan to help children here have a place that they could manage and grow and utilize that keeps them from crime and other issues. So it's a very special project for us. Sometimes people and community is a lot of my inspiration. I think overall, I have my own inspiration, but what inspires me to do what I do and to keep growing and building my practice are the people that I work with and their perspectives and their inspirations. So thank you very much for having me. I'm sure this will be recorded talking to you after.
Thanks, Meg. Give me that. Okay, thank you. I want to talk about Jessica Stewart-Limbe, who couldn't be here tonight because she is working on the White Rock Home Tour, which is this weekend. But she's a huge inspiration for me. She is the one that gets me to go out and vote. She gets me to donate to charities. I just love her to death. So she couldn't be here, but she's going to watch it. So I got really excited when I was asked to give this presentation because the first thing I thought is I get to talk about Donica Lundy. So you're going to hear me talk about her. But Chris's Forum Inspirations, brought to you in Times New Roman, Meg called me and she said, "What the hell is this?" And I was like, okay, so I love all aspects of art and design, including graphic design. So I could have stressed about this first slide for weeks and went through everything. So to make it really easy, I just put Times New Roman. So that's the story. But anyway, I love everything and I'm obsessed with learning about all aspects. So this first one is really simple. I'm going to keep it basic. I just love it. It's Christopher Culver. I actually own this piece, but he does paintings and drawings. This is actually done on white paper. What do I like about it? I like that it's spatial. It's a double, which I find myself gravitating towards, but that's it. And so going into his next work, this starts to have a little bit of queer imagery, which I gravitate towards, but it's also, you know, you can start seeing space in a little bit of this section of the floor. So I just gravitate towards his work a lot, but that's it. So now we're gonna get right into Donica Lundy, who I absolutely adore. So whenever I was asked to be on this presentation, I immediately threw her in a Google slide, and that's sort of the catalyst. But this is a piece by her. You could see the cabinets opening up. You're starting to get a peek inside this person's life, but also just the way that she paints the space. This is another example of how she does a section cut, and she's giving you the view of this person from inside their body. Again, when you look at this up close, there's paintings inside of paintings inside of paintings. And that leads me to, this is one of my pieces when, this is just a watercolor of a building that I did in Lafayette. This was way before Donica's time, but I would also like paint section cuts into my paintings and sort of try to figure out what was going on inside of it. And then this is the back side of the building. And again, well, actually, this is when I first started to sort of find ways to put sort of my queer identity onto, you know, things. I wasn't out of the closet yet, and I was looking for ways to sort of express myself creatively through these different aspects. So this watercolor has Britney Spears lyrics on the top and bottom of it. And the awnings are actually Alexander McQueen dresses. So I was in college, I was gay, and I'd go watch this fashion show literally every single night. And so no one knew that. I was scared to admit it. So I would do things like put the paintings on it. I would listen to the pop music, and I didn't know how to like get it out of me. This is another, I love fashion. This was a Prada ad campaign from that time that I just adored. I love fashion. I follow it the same way I follow all mediums. This, when I was in school, this was a Madonna music video. Again, the section cut. But I would watch this video every single day in grad school and act like it was about the section cut, but really I just wanted to listen to Madonna. And so this was a valid excuse to do it. And so I'm just, in all honesty, pop music, I love it, but I love all aspects about it. I think a lot of people will deduce it to just like a music, but it's not just about the music, it's about graphic design, the directors of the videos, the best songwriters in the world, the best producers in the world, the music video directors, the stage design. This is a Beyonce concert on the left, and when you're in this environment, it is so cool. And to deduce it like just to, you know, the musician, I mean, you could throw it away, but I love accepting like all the aspects of it. And when you're in this environment with your gay friends and your best girlfriends, it's the best time of your life. And like, what is Madonna doing? She's like, I'm gonna hire the best fashion designer in the world right now, Jean-Paul Gaultier. And you know, I think as gay people, we're like, oh my God, did you see what Madonna wore? Or, oh my God, did you see the set? Oh my God, did you see the cover of the CD? So you just get all these different things from it. So I know what I'm doing. I'm like totally like, you know, showing you pop stars. So I'm fully aware of that. But I just want to, you know, I do open my heart to it. This is Paula Abdul, Cold Hearted Snake. I literally wouldn't listen to this song. I would watch the music video of it when I was 5. And the director of this is my favorite director in the world, David Fincher, who literally got to start doing all of Paula Abdul's music videos. He has a very specific style where he follows the person as they're talking. The camera always moves with them. But it was dictated, and he learned from it by literally directing Paula Abdul. And he's my favorite director to this day. And I respect it, and you know, Paula Abdul saw something in him, but that leads me to today is Selena Day. One of my friends is here today. She was in the movie Selena. She still gets a royalty check every month. But we are going after this to celebrate Selena Day together. That is a true story. But Selena was not Mexican. She was actually a Texan, and she's an American, but she became as big as she is because of the Mexican culture embracing her. And I'm so inspired by the Mexican culture. And that leads me to another painting that I saw at the DMA. And before I saw Donica, this is a painting that had the biggest impact on me. We all know about Frida, so I don't have to go into that. I'll just go into, this is a photo that I took myself that I have hanging in my office that I look at. And it's just a photo about the Mexican culture. It's a border, it's a barrier. This is a gate that goes up, and these people do not cross this threshold till the store owner comes and grabs this door. So the gate goes up, and it just encapsulates this culture that I have such respect for, that I get such incredible inspiration from, and I'm so thankful for. Everyone knows I love Mexico. So now I'm just gonna go into my work, and I think my work, I hope, just defines me as a person, and all these things that were inspired just sort of speak for themselves. And so you could go look up all this, but this is just who I am based on what inspires me. I hate you. That's it.
We all talked about some questions that we were interested in. And one that Michael kind of, was a discussion, and he said, he's always interested in, and he realized that when he was looking, he was talking to or listening to a fashion designer who said that she absolutely loved Coco Chanel, and then inspired by Coco Chanel. So we're doing inspirations, and then he looked at the fashion that she produced and couldn't see one trace of Coco Chanel in what this woman was, designing and creating. So the question that you were interested in is you've all talked about inspiration, but where does it manifest itself? What are the elements within the actual work we see? And maybe there isn't, maybe it's just a mindset. So I thought it was a really great question. So,
I think it's a mindset. I
Okay.
hope you don't see it in me. I hope that I'm a sponge that absorbs so many things that what comes out is myself and you can't see it. I don't know. That's just my instinctive answer to that.
I was, since yesterday when Michael posed that, I've been thinking about it too. I'll say, it's Lauren.
Sure. I will jump in, and I could say this for many different great designers that inspire me, but to the Corbeil Radiant City, it's a mindset of having an opinion, because I believe as designers, and we don't have an opinion, then what are we doing this for? So that comes through, and I think that's probably unseen as well.
Yeah. And then Michael, because I thought it was just a great observation and then comment you made the other day. So have you thought about your answer?
Well, I'm literal about the way things influence me.
Yeah.
So if I admire something, if I like, I hope it came through in the thing. I'm fascinated by craft and the way things are made and the way they're put together. And in my own work and the work of our office, we strive to do things that are well-made and exemplary in the execution. And with that as a driving force, it's not just the materiality of the thing, making things that are beautiful, but making sure that the people that use them will enjoy it and be rewarded by their inhabiting the place. And that the way that we look at things makes sense for the community and for sustainability and for other issues that oftentimes we don't think about as an extension of craft. So if you do things that are inexpensive or quick or thoughtless or crappy, they don't endure. We tend not to pay attention to them for the long run. So the architecture that I put in my examples are all things that 100 years from now will all still be there and still be wonderful.
Yeah.
And that works, that's important to me.
And I've been to his studio, and so I can see the direct connection between what he presented to all you and then all the beautiful sketches hand done that was on, in your office. So,
Thank you.
yeah, they're just as gorgeous work. All right, I'm going to open this up to the audience, but what I'm going to request that you do with a question is stand up, please, and say who you are and speak as loudly as possible. So, who has some questions? Yes. Oh, and you're right here. Okay, you're right here, so I'm gonna, Amy, hi.
Well, as Mike said, my name is Amy Hinojosa, and my question to the panel is, we've had so much growth in Dallas of late, people and buildings and homes and apartments. Can you just name one positive and one negative about what's happening with design and with architecture?
Thanks, Amy.
I'll jump in and say one thing I've always appreciated about Dallas, and I've lived in Houston and Austin, is that I believe the core of the city is quite dense, but recently, even though we are expanding and growing, we are embracing our public space and open space in these urban cores, downtown Dallas, the Trinity Park, and they're, I think that's very much a positive. And even in the cities that are Frisco and other, we see this happening as well. So
I love that. I'm not going to answer.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say is, the nice thing about all the growth is there's a lot of opportunity for design professionals like us, which sounds crude and coarse, but it's important. The bad thing about it is there's a lot of opportunity for less thoughtful projects to happen because of the speed and the volume. And we just don't pay as much attention to them as we should. And I think that's the sad thing. Missed opportunity is a sad thing.
Yeah, I'll second that and just say I think it reiterates the importance of planning, and we can renovate things again and again, but I think having that idea for long-lasting environments is the right one.
Who else? Oops, blinds me. Okay. I can we do this?
I don't probably need it. I speak loud enough, I think.
Then
I'm
you're-
Blaine Ladyman.
Okay.
I'm an architect here in Dallas, small firm. I design build. So the question really becomes is, how long did it take you before you figured out that you really were inspired by a specific thing? Or was it just because you got to have to do this panel today? I mean,
Okay.
that's a question.
Oh,
When
I
did
like
you find your inspiration? And how long were you practicing?
And I am going to repeat it. So how long, when was it that you discovered what inspired you?
Yeah.
And so be thinking and get an answer, please.
I will start. I believe starting my own company and taking that leap could not have happened without deep inspiration and soul searching that I continue to do on a daily basis. So for me, it was at that moment and probably years leading up to that. I think I knew 5 years out of school, working for a very large firm, that I would like to have my own firm one day. That was really from the desire to have relationships directly with clients, and I started charting my path from that inspiration to maybe get more experience in that and see different perspectives. So I think I saw it, but I didn't piece it all together until I really knew I had the courage to take that leap.
No? Michael?
Well, I'll just say this. I mentioned earlier the study abroad trip I took while I was at Auburn. And I grew up in the South, very conservative community, very conservative parents. And my father was one of those guys who used to say, "We saved France's ass twice, and they don't appreciate us at all." Any of you have that same father experience? So when I went to Europe, and I spent time in France, and I thought, wow, these people have the most beautiful country in the world. And they have the best food, the best wine, and the best architecture. I mean, it was a kind of a pull back the curtain moment for me. And the other thing that did is it made me aware that there was something really wrong with American urbanism. The lack of public transportation, the lack of green space, the lack of density, driving cars everywhere. And as any of you who've been in those environments know, that's all it takes is exposure to that to realize there's some really great things out in the world that aren't necessarily in a suburban Charlotte, North Carolina. And that, since then, it changed my way of thinking about the world and my way of observing the world. And it focused it on details and materiality and quality of life experience in a completely different way from anything I was thinking about before.
That's fascinating.
One last question.
Okay, one more question. Anyone have a question?
Good question.
Yes, got to please and scream.
Whitney's here.
Chris?
I'm in sales, so I'll be contacting all of you. Chris, what do you think about the last Britney album?
Okay. It's an inside joke, hysterical. Thank you. She's at Avenue Road if you need her.
Since Chris didn't answer on the last
Yes.
question, I'm going to go back to the last question. And I'd just like to give a shout out to Terry Arterburn, who's here tonight in the audience, who I
Yay,
was able
Terry.
to work for at
Love
Studio
Terry.
Outside. Very inspiring in terms of building an office with a great culture and doing awesome design. So
Yeah.
was very inspired by you, Terry. Thanks.
Meg, thank
And-
you so much.
Oh, well, thank you. No, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And